People stared as a poor black child ran after a wealthy man's dog. The next day, when the man showed up at their tiny house, everything changed. The alarm clock buzzed at 5:30 a.m., and Nathan's hand shot out from under the thin blanket to silence it. He didn't want to wake his mom, who was still sleeping on the other side of their shared bedroom. The spring mattress creaked as he sat up, his feet touching the cold floor. "Already up, baby?" His mother's tired voice came from across the room. "Yeah, Mom? Go back to sleep. I got this." Nathan moved quietly through their small house, his worn sneakers barely making a sound on the wooden floor. The morning routine was simple. Start the coffee maker for his mom, pack his backpack, and get ready for another day of helping with cleaning jobs before school. The kitchen was tiny, with just enough space for a small table and 2 chairs. Nathan filled the coffee maker with water and counted out the remaining coffee grounds carefully. They had to make it last until payday. His mother appeared in the doorway, already dressed in her cleaning uniform. "You didn't have to get up so early, Nathan." "I want to help, Mom." He pulled out a chair for her. "Sit down. I made your coffee." She smiled, but Nathan noticed the dark circles under her eyes. "What would I do without you?" The smell of coffee filled their kitchen as Nathan pulled out 2 bowls and the last of the cereal. He poured most of it into his bowl, leaving a smaller portion for his mother. "Mom, you need to eat more than that," Nathan said, watching her push the cereal around in her bowl. "I'm not very hungry this morning," she replied, but Nathan knew better. He'd seen her do this before, making sure he had enough to eat even if it meant she went hungry. "Here, take some of mine." "No, baby. You need your strength for school." She stood up, rinsing her barely touched bowl in the sink. "Speaking of which, we better get moving. Mrs. Davidson's house needs to be cleaned before your school starts." They walked together in the early morning light, their shadows long on the sidewalk. Mrs. Davidson's house was in the wealthy part of Minneapolis, where the lawns were perfectly manicured and luxury cars sat in circular driveways. Nathan noticed how some of the early morning joggers crossed to the other side of the street when they saw them coming. His mother squeezed his hand, like she always did when this happened. "Keep your head up, baby," she whispered. "We're just as good as anyone else." At Mrs. Davidson's house, Nathan helped his mother dust the furniture and vacuum the carpets. The house had 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and a kitchen bigger than their entire apartment. In one of the rooms, he saw a dog bed with toys scattered around it. "Mom," he said quietly, picking up a rubber bone, "do you think we could ever?" "Nathan," she cut him off gently, "we've talked about this. A dog is a big responsibility. We need to focus on other things right now." He put the toy back, but the image of having his own dog stayed with him as they finished cleaning and headed to his school. "Have a good day, baby," his mother said, straightening his orange t-shirt. "I'll see you after school. Remember, go straight home, do my homework, and wait for you," Nathan finished. "I know, Mom." Inside the school, Nathan made his way to his desk, avoiding the usual stares. During lunch, he sat alone at his usual table, watching other kids share stories about their pets. Tommy Williams was talking about how his new puppy had chewed up his father's expensive shoes. "Nathan?" Ms. Roberts, his English teacher, approached his table. "Would you like half of my sandwich? I brought too much today." He wanted to say no, but his stomach growled loudly. "Thank you, Ms. Roberts." The sandwich was fresh and filled with turkey and cheese. Nathan ate it slowly, savoring each bite, thinking about his mother's half-empty bowl of cereal. The final bell rang at 3:15 p.m. Nathan packed his backpack carefully, making sure he had all his homework assignments. The walk home would take about 30 minutes if he didn't stop anywhere. Outside, the autumn air was crisp and leaves crunched under his feet. He took his usual route, past the park where kids played with their dogs, past the convenience store where the owner always watched him suspiciously, and toward the busy intersection that marked the halfway point to home. That's when he saw it, a flash of golden-brown fur darting between parked cars, heading straight for the busy street. Nathan's heart jumped into his throat as he realized what was about to happen. A dog without a leash was running straight toward one of the most dangerous intersections in Minneapolis. Nathan's feet moved before his brain could catch up. The dog, a medium-sized golden-brown mutt, darted between 2 parked cars, its tail wagging as if this was all a game. "Hey!" Nathan called out, his voice cracking. "Stop!" The dog glanced back at him, tongue lolling out, then continued running. Cars honked as it weaved through traffic, causing drivers to slam on their brakes. Nathan's backpack slapped against his spine as he ran. He should be heading home. His mom would worry. But the image of the dog getting hit by a car made his stomach turn. "Someone stop that dog," he shouted, running faster than he ever had during gym class. People on the sidewalk turned to stare. A woman clutched her purse tighter as he ran past. A man pulled his child closer. Nathan saw their faces, saw the assumptions in their eyes, but he couldn't stop. "That kid's chasing something," he heard someone say. "Should we call the police?" Another voice wondered. Nathan's lungs burned. The dog was faster than him, but it kept stopping to sniff things, giving him a chance to catch up. They were getting closer to Madison Avenue, 6 lanes of rush-hour traffic. A car horn blared. Nathan jumped as a blue sedan swerved around the dog, missing it by inches. His heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his throat. "Please stop," he called again, his voice desperate now. He was 4 blocks away from his usual route home. Mom would be furious if she knew he'd gone this far off course. The dog paused at a fire hydrant, and Nathan thought this was his chance. He lunged forward, fingers grazing the red collar around its neck. But the dog darted away playfully, as if inviting him to continue the chase. Sweat soaked through his orange t-shirt. His legs felt like lead. He wasn't a sports kid. He spent most of his time helping his mom or doing homework. Running this far, this fast, was making his muscles scream. "Kid, you okay?" A man loading boxes into a van called out. Nathan could only nod as he ran past, too winded to speak. The dog was heading straight for Madison Avenue. The traffic light had just turned green, and cars were starting to move. "No, no, no," Nathan wheezed. His side cramped painfully. Maybe he should give up. It wasn't his dog. It wasn't his responsibility. His mom always said to avoid trouble, to keep his head down, to stay safe. More people were watching now. A group of teenagers had stopped their basketball game to stare. 2 women paused their conversation outside a coffee shop. Nathan felt their eyes on him, heard their whispers. "What's that boy doing? Somebody should stop him. Where are his parents?" The dog reached the corner of Madison Avenue. Rush hour traffic roared past in both directions. Nathan's legs wobbled with exhaustion. His throat was raw from breathing hard. A police car crawled past, the officer inside watching him closely. Nathan's stomach clenched with fear, but he couldn't stop. Not now. The dog was too close to the traffic. "Come here, boy," he tried again, his voice hoarse. "Please." The dog wagged its tail and took another step toward the busy street. Nathan glanced at the street sign. He was on Cedar Street now, 5 blocks from home. His mom would be checking the time, starting to worry. A massive truck rumbled past, its wind making Nathan's shirt flutter. The dog barked playfully at the noise, edging closer to danger. Cars continued to speed past, their drivers unaware of the drama unfolding at the corner. Nathan's legs trembled with each step. His backpack felt like it was filled with bricks. He could barely breathe. But the dog was right there, just a few feet away, about to run into certain death. Time seemed to slow down as the dog tensed, preparing to dart into traffic. Nathan saw a car approaching in the nearest lane, moving fast. In that moment, he had to make a choice. Give up and save himself from trouble, or risk everything to save this stranger's pet. The memory of his mother's words echoed in his mind. "Keep your head down, baby. Stay safe. Don't draw attention to yourself." But as the dog lifted its paw to take that fatal step into the street, Nathan knew he couldn't live with himself if he did nothing. With the last burst of energy he had, he sprinted forward, ignoring the burning in his legs and the stares of the growing crowd. The car was getting closer. The dog was moving, and Nathan was running out of time. Nathan lunged forward just as the dog stepped off the curb. His fingers grazed the red collar, then caught it. The momentum sent them both sprawling onto the sidewalk, away from the speeding car that whooshed past them. The sound of screeching brakes filled the air. Nathan's heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst. The dog yelped in surprise, but didn't try to run away. "I got you," Nathan gasped, holding the collar firmly. "I got you." His hands shook as he checked the dog for injuries. The animal was panting heavily, but seemed unhurt. Up close, Nathan could see it was well cared for, clean fur, healthy weight, nice collar. "You okay, kid?" someone called out. Nathan looked up to see a small crowd had gathered. Some had their phones out, recording. Others whispered among themselves. A few looked concerned, but most just stared. "I'm fine," he managed between breaths. His knee stung where he'd scraped it on the concrete, and his orange shirt was dirty from the fall. The dog pressed against him, trembling. Nathan noticed a tag on the collar and turned it to read, Max, followed by a phone number. The area code was local. A memory flashed through his mind. His father walking away 6 years ago, suitcase in hand. "Stay strong for your mama," he'd said. Those were his last words before he disappeared forever. Nathan pushed the memory away and focused on Max, who was now licking his hand. "It's okay, boy. You're safe now." His watch showed 4:05 p.m. Mom would definitely be worried. He should call her, but their phone had been disconnected last week. They wouldn't have service again until the bill was paid. "Should we call animal control?" A woman in a business suit asked, phone in hand. "No," Nathan said quickly. "I mean, he has a tag. I can wait with him." The crowd began to thin as the excitement wore off. A few people patted Nathan's shoulder as they left, but most just walked away, already forgetting about the black kid and the dog he'd saved. Max had calmed down now, sitting beside Nathan with his head on his lap. The sun was getting lower, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. Rush hour traffic continued to roar past on Madison Avenue. "What am I going to do with you?" Nathan asked softly, scratching behind Max's ears. The dog's tail thumped against the concrete. He could try to call the number on the tag, but he had no phone. The nearby businesses looked expensive, the kind of places where people like him weren't welcome. His mom's warnings about staying safe, avoiding trouble, rang in his ears. A police car drove by again, slowing as it passed. Nathan's heart rate spiked, but he forced himself to stay calm. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He was helping a lost dog. "Your owner must be looking for you," he told Max, trying to ignore how dark it was getting. "They've got to be worried sick." The streetlights flickered on, casting pools of yellow light on the sidewalk. Nathan's stomach growled. He hadn't eaten since Ms. Roberts' half sandwich at lunch. His legs ached from the chase, and his scraped knee throbbed. A cool breeze made him shiver. Max pressed closer, sharing his warmth. For a moment, Nathan allowed himself to imagine this was his dog, that they were just taking a break on their evening walk home. But Max's tag caught the streetlight, reminding him this wasn't his dog. This was someone else's beloved pet, and that someone was probably searching desperately for him. "Nathan!" His mother's voice cut through the evening air like a knife. He turned to see her running toward him, still in her cleaning uniform, fear etched on her face. "Mom, I can explain." She reached him and pulled him into a tight hug. "I've been looking everywhere for you. Do you know how worried I was?" "I'm sorry, Mom, but this dog..." "A dog." She pulled back, finally noticing Max. "Nathan, what did you do?" Before he could answer, a car pulled up to the curb, an expensive black SUV with tinted windows. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out, his polished shoes clicking on the pavement. "Max," the man called out, his voice thick with emotion. "Max, is that you?" Max's ears perked up, and his tail began to wag furiously. But he didn't move from Nathan's side until the boy gently released his collar. "Go on," Nathan whispered. "Your dad's here." As Max bounded toward his owner, Nathan felt his mother's hand grip his shoulder. The man knelt down to hug his dog, his expensive suit getting dirty on the sidewalk. Then he looked up at Nathan, and in that moment, everything changed. The man stood up, brushing dirt from his suit pants. Max stayed close to him, but kept looking back at Nathan, tail still wagging. "You're the one who caught him?" the man asked, his voice careful, measured. Nathan felt his mother's grip tighten on his shoulder. "Yes, sir," he said, the words barely above a whisper. The streetlight illuminated them all in harsh yellow light. Nathan could see the man clearly now, tall, gray hair at his temples, wearing a suit that probably cost more than their entire apartment. "I'm Richard Thompson," the man said, extending his hand. When Nathan hesitated, he added, "Max has never let anyone catch him before." Nathan's mother stepped forward slightly. "I'm Sarah Williams, and this is my son, Nathan." We should be getting home, Mom. Nathan interrupted. Max was running into traffic. I had to help. Mr. Thompson's eyebrows rose. Traffic? Max was in traffic. On Madison Avenue, Nathan explained, pointing to the busy street. He almost got hit by a car. The man's face paled. He looked down at Max, who was now sitting contentedly between them all. You saved his life? A police car cruised by again, slower this time. Nathan saw the officers inside watching them. His mother saw them too. We really need to go, she said, tugging gently on Nathan's arm. Wait, please. Mr. Thompson held up his hand. Let me at least thank you properly. You saved my best friend. The words hung in the air. Nathan looked at Max, who tilted his head and let out a small whine. Sir, Nathan's mother said, her voice firm but polite, it's getting late, and we live quite far. Let me drive you home, Mr. Thompson offered quickly. It's the least I can do. Nathan felt his mother stiffen. He knew what she was thinking. Never accept rides from strangers, especially not in this neighborhood, especially not when you look like them. That's very kind, she said, but we'll be fine walking. Mr. Thompson glanced at Nathan's scraped knee, the dirt on his clothes. Your son is injured. Please, I insist. A couple walked past them on the sidewalk, giving their small group a wide berth. The woman clutched her purse tighter. Nathan saw Mr. Thompson notice this, saw something flash across his face. Mom, Nathan said quietly, my knee really hurts. She looked down at him, conflict clear in her eyes. The night was getting colder, and they were at least 40 minutes from home by foot. Your SUV, she said to Mr. Thompson. It has working seatbelts? Yes, ma'am. And a first aid kit. Max barked once, as if adding his own encouragement. Nathan couldn't help but smile. Nathan stays in my sight at all times, she said firmly. Mr. Thompson nodded. Of course. Max, too. He seems quite attached to your son. They walked to the SUV, Nathan's mother keeping one hand on his shoulder. The interior smelled like new leather. Max jumped into the back, and Nathan climbed in next to him. Where do you live? Mr. Thompson asked as he started the engine. Nathan felt his mother's hesitation before she gave their address. The SUV pulled away from the curb smoothly, leaving behind the judging eyes of the wealthy neighborhood. So, Nathan, Mr. Thompson said, glancing in the rearview mirror, tell me how you caught Max. As Nathan recounted the chase, he noticed his mother watching Mr. Thompson carefully. She sat straight in her seat, hands folded in her lap, ready for anything. You're in all that way? Mr. Thompson asked, genuine surprise in his voice. Yes, sir. I couldn't let him get hurt. They stopped at a red light. Through the window, Nathan saw the convenience store where the owner always followed him around. The owner was outside, sweeping. He did a double-take seeing Nathan in the expensive SUV. That was very brave, Mr. Thompson said. Most people wouldn't have bothered. Nathan has a good heart, his mother said quietly. Sometimes too good. The SUV turned onto their street. The streetlights here were dimmer, some broken. The contrast between this neighborhood and where they'd been was stark. It's the building on the left, Nathan's mother said. You can drop us at the corner. I'll walk you to your door, Mr. Thompson said firmly. It's dark, and Nathan's knee needs looking at. They pulled up in front of the rundown apartment building. Nathan saw their neighbor's curtains twitch. A black boy and his mother getting out of an expensive SUV with a white man in a suit was not a common sight here. Max whined when Nathan got out, trying to follow him. Stay, Max, Mr. Thompson commanded, but his voice was gentle. He opened the first aid kit and pulled out some supplies. Under the flickering porch light, Mr. Thompson cleaned and bandaged Nathan's knee while his mother watched, arms crossed. No one spoke, but the silence was filled with unasked questions. Thank you, Nathan said when Mr. Thompson finished. For fixing my knee. And for the ride. Thank you for saving Max, Mr. Thompson replied. He straightened up, looking at their building, the broken windows, the crumbling steps. Something changed in his expression. Mrs. Williams, he said suddenly, may I speak with you for a moment? Nathan's mother tensed again. About what? A job opportunity. If you're interested. The porch light flickered, casting shadows across their faces. In the SUV, Max pressed his nose against the window, watching them all. And in that moment, standing on their broken front steps, the future began to change. Nathan watched his mother's face carefully. Her expression was the same one she wore when bill collectors called, guarded, suspicious, ready for bad news. "What kind of job opportunity?" she asked, her voice neutral. Mr. Thompson glanced at their building again. "Would you mind if we discuss this inside? It's getting cold out here." Nathan saw his mother's internal struggle play across her face. Having a stranger in their small apartment meant exposing their poverty, their struggles, their reality. "Mom," Nathan said softly, "Max looks cold too." As if on cue, Max whined from the car. Mr. Thompson smiled. He doesn't like being away from his rescuer. "Fine," his mother said finally, "but just for a few minutes." They climbed the creaky stairs to their second-floor apartment. Nathan noticed how Mr. Thompson took in everything. The missing handrail, the water stains on the walls, the flickering hallway light. Their apartment door stuck slightly, like always. Nathan's mother had to push it twice before it opened. "Please excuse the mess," she said automatically, though the apartment was spotless. It had to be. She was a professional cleaner after all. Max trotted in behind them, sniffing everything with interest. The apartment was one room, with a tiny kitchen alcove and a bathroom. Two twin beds sat against opposite walls. A folding table with two chairs served as their dining room. "Would you like some coffee, Mr. Thompson?" Nathan's mother asked, her cleaning uniform rustling as she moved toward their small kitchen. "Please call me Richard." And yes, coffee would be wonderful. Nathan sat on his bed, and Max immediately came over to put his head on Nathan's knee. The dog's presence made the strange situation feel a little more normal. "You have a lovely home, Mrs. Williams," Mr. Thompson said, taking the folding chair she offered. "Sarah," she corrected, measuring coffee grounds carefully into their old machine. "And you don't have to be polite. I know what this place is." Mr. Thompson's expression softened. "What it is clean, organized, well cared for. Like everything else you do, I imagine." Nathan's mother paused, her hand hovering over the coffee maker. "What do you mean?" "I know your work. You clean the Davidson house, don't you?" She turned slowly. "Yes. How did you?" "I own the property management company that maintains their house. Mrs. Davidson has mentioned many times how thorough and professional you are." The coffee maker gurgled to life, filling the small space with its aroma. Nathan scratched Max's ears, watching the adults carefully. "Is that what this is about?" his mother asked. "The Davidsons complained?" No, Mr. Thompson said quickly. "Quite the opposite. They've sung your praises. In fact, several of our clients have specifically requested you." She poured 3 cups of coffee, her movements precise despite her obvious tension. "So what exactly are you offering?" "I want to hire you directly. Full-time with benefits. My company manages over 30 luxury properties in Minneapolis, and we need someone reliable to oversee their cleaning and maintenance." The coffee cup trembled slightly in his mother's hands. "What's the catch?" "No catch. Your son saved my dog's life today. But even without that, your reputation precedes you. This isn't charity, Sarah. It's business." Nathan held his breath. He'd never seen anyone talk to his mother this way. Like an equal, like someone worthy of respect. "The salary," Mr. Thompson continued, "would be significantly more than what you're making now. Health insurance included. Paid vacation. A company car for work use." "A car?" The word slipped out before she could stop it. "You can't clean 30 houses using the bus system. The position requires reliable transportation." Nathan's mother sat down heavily in the other folding chair. "Why now? Why me?" Mr. Thompson looked at Max, who was still resting his head on Nathan's knee. "Sometimes we need a wake-up call to see what's right in front of us. Your son risked himself to save my dog today. He didn't see Max as a rich man's pet. He just saw someone who needed help. That's how I raised him," she said quietly. "Exactly. That's the kind of person I want managing my properties. Someone who does the right thing, regardless of circumstances." Nathan watched his mother's face, saw the moment hope started to break through her careful defenses. "I need to give notice at my current jobs," she said slowly. "Of course. Take whatever time you need to transition. And Nathan's schedule. I need to be home when he's home. We can work around school hours. Maybe even set up a study space at the office for him." Max moved from Nathan to his mother, placing his head on her lap. She absently stroked his ears, lost in thought. I don't have the right clothes for an office job, she said finally, and Nathan heard the real fear behind her words. Fear of not fitting in, of being judged, of failing. Mr. Thompson smiled. The job comes with a signing bonus. For whatever you need to get started. Tears welled up in his mother's eyes. She blinked them away quickly, but Nathan saw them. So did Mr. Thompson. Sleep on it, he said gently, pulling out a business card. Call me tomorrow, or whenever you're ready. He stood up, and Max returned to Nathan's side. Come on, Max. Time to go home. The dog whined, looking between Nathan and the door. Can? Nathan started, then stopped, afraid to ask. Can what, son? Mr. Thompson prompted. Can I visit Max sometimes? The question hung in the air. Nathan felt his mother tense, ready to protect him from disappointment. Mr. Thompson knelt down to Nathan's eye level. Max would love that, and I have a feeling he's not the only one who could use a friend. As they walked Mr. Thompson and Max to the door, Nathan saw something he hadn't seen in years. His mother standing straight and tall, like the weight on her shoulders had finally started to lift. The next morning, Nathan woke up to find his mother already dressed, sitting at their small folding table with Mr. Thompson's business card in her hands. Mom? He sat up, rubbing sleep from his eyes. What time is it? 6:30, she said, not looking up from the card. Too early to call. Nathan got out of bed, his bandaged knee a little stiff. Are you going to take the job? She finally looked at him, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she hadn't slept much. What do you think I should do? Really? You're asking me? You're the one who started all this, she said, but her voice was gentle. Chasing after that dog, Nathan went to their tiny kitchen and started making coffee, just like every morning. I think you should call him. It could be a trick, she said quietly. People don't just offer jobs like this. Mr. Thompson's not like that. You saw how he was with Max. The coffee maker gurgled to life. Nathan pulled out their last 2 clean mugs. Baby, his mother said, we can't trust people just because they're nice to dogs. Then trust them because they're nice to us. Nathan brought her a cup of coffee. When's the last time someone treated us like that? She wrapped her hands around the warm mug. That's what worries me. When things seem too good to be true. They usually are, Nathan finished. It was one of her favorite sayings. But what if this time it's not? The morning sun streamed through their window, catching the dust motes in the air. From somewhere outside came the sound of a dog barking, reminding Nathan of Max. I'd have to quit my other jobs, his mother said. All of them. What if this doesn't work out? What if it does? She stared into her coffee cup as if looking for answers. When did you get so wise? I learned from you, Nathan said, sitting down across from her. You always tell me to be brave, to do the right thing. Maybe this is the right thing. His mother reached across the table and took his hand. Her palm was rough from years of cleaning, but her touch was gentle. What about school? This would change everything. Maybe that's good, Nathan said. Maybe we deserve some change. She looked at the business card again. It's 7 now. Still too early to call? Mom, he's probably up. Rich people wake up early too. A small smile crossed her face. Let me think about it while I get ready for work. But Nathan could see the decision in her eyes. She'd already made up her mind. She just needed to find the courage to act on it. They went through their morning routine, like always. Nathan packed his backpack while his mother got dressed for her cleaning jobs. But something felt different. The air in their small apartment seemed charged with possibility. At 7:30, his mother picked up her phone. The service had been reconnected yesterday. She'd scraped together enough money from her emergency fund. Should I? She asked, holding Mr. Thompson's card. Yes, Nathan said simply. She dialed the number, her hand shaking slightly. Nathan held his breath as it rang. Richard Thompson speaking. His mother's voice was steady despite her trembling hands. Mr. Thompson? This is Sarah Williams. Sarah, I'm glad you called. Have you thought about my offer? Yes, I have. She looked at Nathan, who nodded encouragingly. I'd like to accept, if the offer still stands. Wonderful. When can you start? I need to give notice at my current jobs. 2 weeks. Perfect. That gives us time to set everything up. Can you come by the office today? We can handle the paperwork and discuss details. Nathan watched his mother's face transform. Years seemed to fall away as she stood straighter, spoke more confidently. I have 3 houses to clean this morning. but I could come by this afternoon? 2 o'clock? I'll text you the address. And Sarah? Bring Nathan if you'd like. Max would love to see him. When she hung up, Nathan hugged her tightly. You did it, Mom. She hugged him back, and he felt her tears on his shoulder. We did it, baby. You and your big heart did this. They walked to the bus stop together, both quiet, processing the morning's events. At the corner, his mother stopped suddenly. Nathan, her voice was serious. I want you to know something. No matter what happens with this job, I'm proud of you. What you did yesterday, risking yourself to save that dog. It was dangerous and scary, but it was also brave and kind. I just did what you taught me, Nathan said. To help others when we can. She smoothed his hair, like she used to do when he was smaller. Sometimes I forget you're growing up, getting so wise. The bus appeared at the end of the street. Mom, can I come with you to the office later? Don't you have homework? I could do it there. Please? I want to see Max. She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. Okay, but homework first, dog second. As they boarded the bus, Nathan noticed his mother was still standing straight and tall, like she had last night, like someone who was finally allowing herself to hope. The bus pulled away from their neighborhood, carrying them toward a future that suddenly seemed much brighter than the past. 2 weeks passed in a blur of goodbyes and new beginnings. Nathan stood in front of their bathroom mirror, adjusting his new collared shirt. His mother had bought it yesterday with part of her signing bonus, the first new piece of clothing he'd had in months. Ready? His mother called from their room. She looked different too, wearing a navy blue business suit that made her stand taller, prouder. Almost. Nathan smoothed his shirt one more time. Today was his mother's first official day at Thompson Property Management, and he was going with her before school. A horn honked outside Mr. Thompson right on time. They'd gotten used to his punctuality over the past 2 weeks, during training sessions and paperwork meetings. Got your backpack? His mother asked, checking her reflection one last time. Yes. And my homework? They walked down the creaky stairs together, past the neighbors who now watched them with curious eyes instead of suspicious ones. The black SUV waited at the curb, Max's face visible in the back window. Good morning, Mr. Thompson called out as they approached. Max barked excitedly when he saw Nathan. Morning, Richard, his mother replied, still getting used to using his first name. She opened the back door, and Nathan climbed in next to Max, who immediately started licking his face. Ready for your first day, Sarah? Mr. Thompson asked as they pulled away from the curb. As ready as I'll ever be, she said, smoothing her skirt nervously. The office was in a modern building downtown, all glass and steel. Nathan had visited twice during his mother's training, but it still impressed him. Max trotted beside them as they walked through the lobby, his collar tags jingling. Good morning, Mrs. Williams, the security guard said, handing her an ID badge. She'd met most of the staff during her training, but hearing people address her so professionally still made her smile. The elevator carried them to the 5th floor. Mr. Thompson's office took up half the space, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The other half held cubicles and a conference room. Sarah, your office is ready, Mr. Thompson said, leading them down a short hallway. Nathan watched his mother's face as she saw it for the first time. The room wasn't huge, but it had a window, a real desk, and a nameplate on the door that read Sarah Williams, Property Management Supervisor. My office, she whispered, running her fingers over the nameplate. And Nathan, Mr. Thompson continued, we've set up a study space for you in the break room. For after school, the break room had comfortable chairs, a small library of books, and a corner desk that would be perfect for homework. Max immediately curled up under it, as if he knew it was Nathan's spot. This is too much, his mother said, but Mr. Thompson shook his head. This is exactly what you've earned. Now, let me show you the property management software. Nathan sat at his new desk, pulling out his math homework. He could hear his mother and Mr. Thompson talking about schedules and cleaning crews, her voice growing more confident with each question she asked. Nathan, Mr. Thompson called. Time for school. I'll drive you. The ride to school felt different. Nathan sat straighter, his new shirt crisp against his skin. Max lay with his head in Nathan's lap, shedding golden hair on his dark pants. Remember, Mr. Thompson said as they pulled up to the school, come straight to the office after class. Your mother will be there until 5. Yes, sir. Nathan scratched Max's ears one last time before climbing out. And Nathan, Mr. Thompson's voice stopped him. Thank you. For what? For showing me what I was missing. Sometimes it takes a child's wisdom to make adults see clearly. Nathan felt his face warm. I just wanted to help Max. You did more than that. You reminded me that character isn't about where someone lives or what they own. It's about what they do when nobody's watching. Inside the school, things were different too. Tommy Williams, who usually ignored him, pointed at the SUV as it drove away. Was that your dog? He asked. No, Nathan replied. That's Max. He belongs to Mr. Thompson. You know Mr. Thompson? My dad says he owns half the buildings downtown. Nathan shrugged. He's my mom's boss now. Ms. Roberts noticed the change too. During lunch, she stopped by his table. New shirt? Yes, ma'am. Mom got a new job. It looks nice on you. She smiled. You seem different today. Happier. Things are better now, Nathan said simply. The school day passed quickly. For the first time, Nathan didn't watch the clock, dreading the long walk home. When the final bell rang, he packed his bag carefully and walked out to find the black SUV already waiting. Max's tail thumped against the seat as Nathan climbed in. Mr. Thompson smiled at him in the rearview mirror. Good day. Yes, sir. How's my mom doing? Like she's been doing this job for years. She's already reorganized the entire filing system. At the office, Nathan found his mother in her new office, phone to her ear, managing a cleaning crew crisis with calm authority. She waved at him through the glass, pointing toward his study space. The break room was quiet except for Max's gentle snoring under the desk. Nathan spread out his homework, feeling strangely peaceful. Through the window, he could see the city stretching out before him, full of possibilities he'd never imagined before. Need any help? His mother asked, appearing in the doorway. No, I got it. He smiled at her. You look good behind a desk, Mom. She came over and kissed the top of his head. And you look good in that shirt. Happy. I am happy. He looked at Max, still sleeping under his desk. Everything's different now. Because you were brave enough to chase after a dog. Because you were brave enough to trust someone new. She squeezed his shoulder. We were both brave. Now finish your homework. Mr. Thompson's invited us to dinner at his house. Nathan's eyes widened. Really? Really? He says Max is pining for you. As if hearing his name, Max lifted his head and wagged his tail. Nathan reached down to pat him, marveling at how one split-second decision to chase after a runaway dog had changed everything. Nathan sat in his mother's new office, watching her direct cleaning crews through her headset. 1 month into her new job, and she moved through her responsibilities like she'd been born for this work. Unit 412 needs a deep clean by 3, she said into the microphone. Mrs. Chun is very particular about her hardwood floors. She noticed Nathan watching and winked at him. Max lay at Nathan's feet, a constant companion during his after-school hours at the office. The dog had become something of a mascot around the building, greeting employees and visitors with equal enthusiasm. How's the homework coming? His mother asked between calls. Almost done. Just one more math problem. She smiled, pride evident in her expression. Nathan's grades had improved significantly since they'd started their new routine. Having a quiet place to study and regular meals made a big difference. The door opened, and Mr. Thompson walked in. Sarah, excellent work with the Davidson renovation cleanup. Mrs. Davidson called specifically to praise your team's attention to detail. Thank you, Richard. She didn't blush at compliments anymore. We added extra time for the marble countertop polishing, like you suggested. That's why you're perfect for this job. You understand both sides, the clients and the crews. He turned to Nathan. And how are you doing, young man? Good, sir. I got an A on my science project. The one about dog behavior? Excellent. I knew having Max as your subject would help. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Standing there was Tommy Williams and his father, one of Mr. Thompson's biggest clients. Mr. Williams, Nathan's mother said professionally, standing up. What brings you by? Just finalizing some paperwork with Richard, Mr. Williams replied. His eyes landed on Nathan. Tommy tells me your son is quite the scholar these days. Yes, sir, she said proudly. Nathan works very hard. Tommy shuffled his feet. Hey, Nathan, we're having a birthday party this weekend. Want to come? Nathan looked at his mother in surprise. He'd never been invited to a classmate's party before. That would be wonderful, his mother said smoothly. What time should I drop him off? Mr. Williams waved his hand. No need. We can pick him up on the way to the park. Tommy says Nathan lives near the office. Actually, Mr. Thompson interjected, they're moving this weekend to the renovated unit in the Cedar Street complex. Nathan watched the subtle changes in Mr. Williams's expression, surprise, then understanding. The Cedar Street apartments were one of Mr. Thompson's most exclusive properties. Employee housing benefit, Nathan's mother explained, her voice confident. Part of my new position? Excellent property, Mr. Williams said, nodding. My sister lives there. Well, Tommy, looks like you'll have a neighbor to play with. After they left, Nathan turned to his mother. You didn't tell me Tommy Williams lived in our new building. Surprise? She smiled. I wanted to wait until we were all moved in. The move had been Mr. Thompson's idea. The apartment came with the job, he'd insisted, and it would be more convenient for everyone. Nathan's mother had resisted at first, not wanting to accept what she saw as charity. It's not charity, Mr. Thompson had explained. It's investment in my best employee. Now, watching his mother handle calls and organize schedules with easy confidence, Nathan understood what Mr. Thompson had meant. She wasn't just a cleaning lady anymore. She was a professional, respected and valued. Time to head home, she said, checking her watch. We need to pack the last boxes before tomorrow's move. Their small apartment looked emptier now, most of their belongings already packed in boxes labeled with their new address. Nathan's mother had insisted on cleaning it thoroughly, even though they were leaving. Always leave things better than you found them, she'd said, scrubbing the bathroom one last time. That evening, as they ate dinner at their folding table, she asked, Are you nervous? About moving? A little, Nathan admitted, but excited too. We'll have separate bedrooms and a real dining room, she added. No more folding tables, and a dog park nearby for Max visits. She reached across the table and took his hand. I'm proud of you, baby. You know that, right? These changes, they're happening because of you. Because of us, he corrected. You took the chance, Mom. You believed things could be better. A knock at the door interrupted them. Mr. Thompson stood there with Max and several pizza boxes. Thought you could use help with the last-minute packing, he said. And Max was missing Nathan. They spent the evening wrapping dishes in newspaper and filling boxes, sharing pizza and stories. Max moved from person to person, offering moral support and cleaning up dropped pepperoni. Oh, Mr. Thompson said suddenly, reaching into his pocket. I almost forgot. This came today. He handed Nathan's mother an envelope. She opened it carefully, then gasped. Is this real? Your first bonus check. The Davidson renovation came in under budget thanks to your management. Nathan watched his mother stare at the check, her hands trembling slightly. He knew they'd never seen that much money at once before. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say you'll use it for something fun, Mr. Thompson suggested. You both deserve it. Later, after Mr. Thompson and Max left, Nathan found his mother sitting on her bed, still holding the check. What are you thinking about? He asked. She patted the bed beside her. Remember when you asked for a dog? Nathan's heart skipped a beat. Yeah, maybe it's time we talked about that again. She smiled at his expression. After we're settled in the new place, of course. Nathan hugged her tightly, feeling the promise of tomorrow in her words. Through the window, he could see the stars twinkling above their old neighborhood, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. 2 months after moving into their new apartment, Nathan woke up to quiet whispers outside his bedroom door. It was Saturday morning, his 12th birthday. Sure, you'll wake him, he heard his mother say. Max's distinct whine followed, along with Mr. Thompson's muffled laugh. Nathan sat up in his bed, his own bed, in his own room, and tried to contain his excitement. Nathan? His mother knocked softly. Are you awake? Yes, Mom. The door opened, and his mother entered carrying a chocolate cupcake with a single lit candle. Mr. Thompson followed with Max, who immediately jumped onto Nathan's bed. Happy birthday, baby, his mother said, sitting on the edge of his bed. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Make a wish, Mr. Thompson added, smiling. Nathan looked at them. His mother in her silk robe they'd bought with her bonus. Mr. Thompson in casual weekend clothes instead of his usual suit, Max's tail thumping against his legs. He closed his eyes and blew out the candle. What did you wish for? His mother asked. Can't tell. It won't come true. Well, Mr. Thompson said, maybe your wish can wait until you've opened your presents. Nathan's eyes widened. On previous birthdays, presents had been simple, new socks, maybe a book from the used bookstore. But this year was different. His mother handed him a small box wrapped in bright paper. This one first. Inside was a new cell phone. Not the latest model, but new in his own. Mom, really? You need to be able to call me after school, she said practically, but her smile gave away her pleasure at his reaction. And to coordinate Max's walks. Speaking of Max, Mr. Thompson said, pulling something from his pocket, he has something for you too. He handed Nathan an envelope. Inside was a photo of a brown and white puppy wearing a red collar. Her name is Luna, Mr. Thompson explained. She's at the shelter waiting to meet you. If you want. Nathan looked at his mother in disbelief. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Happy birthday, baby. My own dog. His voice cracked. Really? Really, she confirmed. Mr. Thompson helped me find her. She's about 6 months old, already trained, and according to the shelter, very good with other dogs. Max sniffed the photo curiously, as if giving his approval. Can we go see her now? Nathan asked, already climbing out of bed. His mother laughed. Get dressed first, then breakfast, then we'll go to the shelter. The drive to the shelter felt like the longest of Nathan's life. Max sat beside him in the back seat, occasionally licking his hand as if sensing his excitement. Now remember, his mother said from the front seat, having a dog is a big responsibility. I know, Mom. I'll walk her every day, feed her, clean up after her, and train her, Mr. Thompson added. Max and I can help with that. The shelter was bright and clean, with photos of adopted dogs covering the walls. A staff member named Jenny greeted them. You must be Nathan, she said warmly. Luna's been waiting for you. She led them to a play area where a small brown and white puppy sat wagging her tail. Nathan knelt down, and Luna immediately ran to him, covering his face with kisses. She likes you, Jenny observed. Would you like to take her for a walk? Nathan looked at his mother, who nodded. He clipped the leash to Luna's collar, and they headed outside to the shelter's fenced yard. Max went with them, gently sniffing the puppy. They're getting along well, Mr. Thompson said, watching the dogs play. Nathan's mother wrapped her arm around his shoulders. Like they were meant to be family. The adoption paperwork took an hour to complete. Nathan sat on the floor with Luna while his mother signed documents, and Mr. Thompson helped arrange for the puppy's final vet check. Ready to take her home? Jenny asked, handing Luna's new tags to Nathan. Home. Their new apartment with its big windows and separate bedrooms, the dog park across the street. The neighbors who waved hello instead of watching suspiciously. Yeah, Nathan said, clipping the tags to Luna's collar. We're ready? In the car, Luna settled between Nathan and Max, falling asleep with her head on Nathan's lap. Thank you, he said quietly. Both of you. His mother turned in her seat to look at him. You earned this, baby. All of it? By chasing a dog? By showing us all what courage looks like, Mr. Thompson corrected. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is care about something more than our own fear. At home, their new home, Nathan helped Luna explore every room. She sniffed the corners, wagged at the neighbors, and finally curled up in the dog bed they prepared next to Nathan's. Perfect fit, his mother said, watching them. Just like us here. That evening, they celebrated with cake and ice cream. Luna and Max shared a special dog-safe cupcake Mr. Thompson had brought. Nathan's new phone buzzed with birthday messages from school friends. Real friends now, not just classmates who ignored him. As the sun set, Nathan sat on their balcony with both dogs, watching the city lights come on. His mother and Mr. Thompson talked quietly inside, their laughter drifting through the open door. Luna put her head on his knee, her brown eyes trusting and full of love. On his other side, Max leaned against him, the dog who had started it all, who had led him to chase after something better. Good dogs, Nathan whispered, scratching both their ears. Below, The city hummed with life. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, and both Luna and Max perked up their ears. But they stayed where they were, content in their new home, with their new family. Nathan smiled, realizing he hadn't needed to make a birthday wish after all. Everything he could have wished for was already here.